Welcome to the Sales Career Podcast. This is your host, Kevin Hopp. Whether you're an executive, sales leader, or just getting your career in sales started, I'm here to help you read between the lines and hear the real stories that you can't get from a resume or from a LinkedIn profile, all designed to help you shape your own sales career. Let's dive right into today's episode and see what we can learn.
My name's Colin Mitchell. I'm going to be the guest host today. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Sales Career Podcast. Kevin Hopp is your host on other days, and today we're going to be focusing on Kevin's sales career story. So, Kevin, welcome to your own podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited to get going here. I'm fascinated by people's stories, and I think that's going to be the bedrock of what this is all about, particularly in sales, right? It's a really big, broad thing to say. When people say, like, I'm in sales, they could work at a bank, they could work in software sales, they work at a car lot, you know? I've heard some really, really interesting stories, right? Like last summer, quick story. Last summer, I was at my uncle's lake house in South Carolina, and he had a guy over. The guy's like, so Kevin, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a sales consultant. He's like, I work in sales. I was like, cool. What do you sell? And he's like, I sell the parts that people use to manufacture aluminum smelting machines. And I'm like, that is the most specific sales job I've ever heard, because his parts, they're designed to melt. So like nothing can withstand an aluminum smelting process. So he's constantly selling something to people, and he's like, this one will last like at least 90 days because he knows that they're going to use it in a furnace and it's going to melt. It's really like, so that just got me kind of thinking of like, man, we all have our own stories in sales. We all have, almost no one has this linear straight line, right? Especially in today's day and age, right? You know, my uncle might listen to this. He has that straight line. He's been at one firm his whole career, and he's had different jobs. He'll argue with me and be like, no, man, I had a bunch of different jobs, but he's the one firm the whole time. And now he's in sales, and he is now a executive vice president, and he's going to retire there. But that's so rare, right? Like that's not the way sales careers work anymore. So I'm really excited to kind of, I guess, tell my story today and kick off a series talking about other people's stories and see what we can all learn from it. Yeah.
I mean, some would argue that we're all in sales, whether we want to admit it or not, right?
Ooh, that's a meta take. Are we all in sales though? If you don't have a quota, are you in sales? I don't know.
Most people in sales aren't hitting their quota anyway. So what's it matter?
Ooh, that's a good point. I don't know. I used to get butthurt when people would say like we're all in sales, because I'm like, you're not the one who's going to get fired if you miss quota. All right. Like, because I've worked in some cutthroat jobs. I've worked in some not so cutthroat jobs. But to your point, we all should be in sales, especially if you're in business, right? If you work in a for-profit entity, you should be in sales, because sales in general is the idea of how do we, take what we have and get it to our customer base, right? It doesn't have to be cold outbound. It can be a relationship. How can you just help solve people's problems in a way that they're using what you have? Yeah. And that's sales in the most elemental level.
Or how can you sell your colleague on your idea?
I mean, if you want to talk about that,
How do you sell your wife to marry you? How do you sell your daughter to eat her vegetables?
Yeah, well, geez, everyone, all my friends and family know that I was born to be a salesperson.
Well, I will tell you that you will question whether sales is for you or not when you've got to tell your daughter it's bedtime and it's time to eat your vegetables.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, my daughter's too young at this point, but, one of these days she'll talk back, and I'm not looking forward to it.
All right, so let's jump into the Kevin Hopp sales career story. Take us back. Where did it all start?
It's a good question. I think what's really important about my story is to like look at where it came from before the working world, right? So I went to junior college, and going to junior college was never something I saw myself doing. So I felt kind of right away that I was kind of a failure, to be honest with you. I was like, shoot, I guess I don't want to go to the only school I got into is Sonoma State University. Shout out Seawolves to everyone out there, but I didn't want to go. I was like not ready to leave the house and didn't think that was the place for me. So I went to junior college and then transferred to UC Santa Barbara, go Gauchos. And while I was at UCSB, I was a psychology major. And every time I tell people that, they're like, oh, psychology of sales, you were probably thinking of, that's why you did it, because you want to understand people and understand how to sell to them, right? And the truth is, absolutely not. I just thought it was interesting. I just thought that the topics were interesting. It was the courses I took in junior college that I leaned forward the most. And I was like, oh, wow. Like there's theories around the way people think. There's theories around the way people act, the way they act. So I had no intention on getting into sales at all when I was in college.
What is it about psychology and just people in general that you were so curious about while in college?
I think I'm very extroverted, right? By the purest definition of extrovert, like the definition of introvert and extrovert, it's not just are you a people person or you're not, but how do you recharge your batteries, right? Like that's what I learned in school, right? I always thought that extrovert just means you talk a lot. I'm like, well, I talk a lot, but it also means that where you get the most satisfaction, where you feel the most comfortable. Like a lot of people, that's like, I need my meditation. I need to be alone. I need to do yoga. I need to read a book. That's not me. I need to be with people, talking to people, learning about people's stories, like whatever it is, right? Ask my wife. I'm constantly on the weekend saying like, where can we go? What can we do? Who can we call? Like I'm that guy. I'm the planner. And none of my friends in my friend group make plans because they know I do. Like they don't even reach out at this point anymore. They just know that I'm going to reach out to them. And then we plan from there. So I think it was just that nature of being super curious about humans and a really healthy distrust for like mathematics and science. The hard sciences like chemistry and math and stuff, like our brain doesn't work that way. It's interesting, right? Like my dad's a mechanical engineer, PhD, brilliant guy, but I'm not. I just don't have a math brain. Like I don't do mental math very well. All my teachers lied to me growing up. They said, well, you got to get good at mental math. You're not always going to have a calculator. Joke's on you. I've got $3,000 in technology within 1 foot of my person at all times, including on important sales calls, including, in all the important moments. So that's kind of why I leaned into that. So in college, I did 4 internships, and only in 2 years of college because I transferred. So when I transferred to UCSB, I became obsessed with like, okay, what do I want to do? The first thing I did, I got an internship in the program, in the psychology department program. So I was the assistant to the chair of the department because the first thing I wanted to check off my box was, do I want to be a psychologist or do I want to study psychology? And I figured out within the first 6 months, I don't want to do that. I learned a lot about academia, a lot about the back workings of it. And like, I looked at all of it and was like, this doesn't do it. Like, it's not interesting to me. Then I did an internship at a software company called Ontraport, still out there. It's in Santa Barbara. Great little company. Very much, it was an unpaid internship. Like you showed up and they had like a curriculum for you. I didn't learn a whole lot, to be honest, but I was starting to like dip the waters into like, what is this technology stuff all about, right? Then that summer, I did an internship with Target, like Target stores.
Okay.
So there is no Target in Santa Barbara for those of you out there in California. So I stayed in Isla Vista. I stayed in Santa Barbara over the summer and I drove to Oxnard every day. And I would work 9 to 10 hour days at the Oxnard Target and drive back, which is about an hour and 10 minutes both ways. So I just crushed it, put a bunch of miles on my Corolla. And I leaned into the idea of, hey, I love people. I'm a people person. Maybe I need to be a tactical manager, right? Because Target is like as tactical of management as you can possibly get. It's like they have a very militaristic hierarchy at Target. It's like there's the general who runs the store. Then there's like the division leaders, which are the people that run the different parts of the store. Like these people run the equipment. These people run the clothing. These people run the food, right? And then underneath them, they have sergeants that run their groups. And I love that militaristic hierarchy, made it very clear in my head. and I interned at like the I guess like VP level or whatever, like the one below the general manager of the store. But I figured out that retail is a freaking grind, man. Like,
And how long did you stick with that?
it was a 3-month program. It was just the summer, right? So it's just the summer, and then at the end of it, you're supposed to get a job offer. I didn't get an offer, so I failed. Like I didn't meet their requirements to get the offer, and they boast that like 95% of the people that go through the program do get the offer. So that kind of double, triple told me that like this isn't for me, you know, like the tactical management of being in a retail environment and wearing the red and khaki every day.
That must have been tough, like making that drive for 3 months.
Yeah.
For Target,
Yeah.
and then not getting the offer. What were you feeling in that moment?
It was brutal. It was brutal. You know, like I gave it my all. I tried hard. Tried really hard, and it wasn't the right thing for me. It was, hard to swallow pills, right? And I think a lot like everyone else out there, I've had to eat a lot of those, right? The first one was being in junior college and getting a 3.85 GPA and buying all the UCLA swag, thinking I'm going to UCLA and not getting in. That was a hard to swallow pill. Like I thought, yeah, go to junior college, crush it. They have a whole program where it's like if you have over a 3.75 GPA, they like virtually guarantee it's like really high chance. I still didn't get it, right? Like,
But wasn't it even before that? Even just going to the junior college.
yeah, that was a hard to swallow pill.
You were already swallowing that hard pill.
Yeah.
Didn't get into UCLA.
Yeah.
Didn't get the Target gig.
Yeah.
Then at that point, most people would have felt pretty defeated.
Yeah, but you can't have that attitude, right? Like, I think the worst trait that I have is I need to experience things for myself. I have a hard time. I don't read a lot of books. I should read more books. I do most of my information absorbing through podcasts and online and stuff like that, right? But I don't read a lot of books, so I learned the hard way on so many things.
I think some people call that being stubborn.
Yeah.
And the only reason
the
only reason that I know that is because I'm the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes, even if somebody tells you something 100 times until you experience it, you don't get it.
That's right. Yeah. So I've done that so many times, and we haven't even started talking about like the career work stuff. Like there's a lot more hard to swallow pills there too. But each time, like it's a really clear trajectory of what I've done going up and to the right in terms of I take that L, you know, oh shit, I didn't get the Target job, and I look at it as a learning moment where I'm like, look, I just don't want to be in retail. Like it's kind of a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Because even if I had gotten that job, like they tell you, yeah, you're not going home for Thanksgiving. You're not going to be with your family for Christmas. Black Friday, you're here for 36 hours straight. You know, stuff like that where I'm like, I don't really care if people get their TV on sale or not today. Like I just don't, it's not like in me to like be all excited about that, you know? So I took that L, went into my senior year, and then I got another internship. This internship was in customer success at a company called Invoca, software company, still in Santa Barbara. They had just raised a series, I want to say they're Series A or Series B. Back then, it was a huge round of like 15, 20 million. And that was like Silicon Valley, right? Like it was like everyone had the branded Patagonias and laptops and MacBooks with the stickers on them and everything. And I was just like, yo, this is cool. Oh, beer on tap in the break room, big beanbag chairs everywhere. It was really, really cool. And that got me very, very solidly thinking, okay, I'm going to be in SaaS. That's what I'm going to do because I like this. And I was interested in the software. I thought it was really, really, interesting stuff. And then it was easy for me to do the work of the job, meaning like I'm tech savvy, right? So I'm like flying around on the MacBook and I know how to use all these different software programs. I'm like, okay, so I can do this, And it felt interesting and fun and entertaining to go into the office every day.
So what were you doing in that internship in a customer success role?
Yeah. So I was sitting on the opposite side of the office from the salespeople. Why is that important? Because I kept hearing all the noise and the fun that salespeople had, and I would be like, "What's going on over there? Why are they all cheering? Like, did they just ring a gong? What does that mean? You know?" And I'm attracted to that energy, right? The piece that we didn't talk about here, I also played high school football. So I'm not a collegiate athlete. People always say like, "Oh, look for D1 athletes to make great salespeople." Well, dude, if you played serious sports at any point, you're probably going to be a good salesperson because you have that competitive drive. I'm very driven. And I'm very, very competitive. And that was kind of born in me in high school football. I played all 4 years, CIF winning team, Maricosta High School, shout out.
I believe you still have your helmet.
I still have my helmet. There's actually a famous YouTube video of me wearing my helmet, making cold calls.
Yes.
And I sell my championship ring too. I wear that during the season from time to time. But where's I going with this? So I that internship in customer success, I was basically doing grunt work for a customer success manager that would say like, because they sold MarTech software. So it was call tracking and analytics software. So it's like a brand like, 1-800windows.com or something like that. They would pay Invoca for the software to track the phone calls that came to that 1-800 number and attribute that it was driven by X or Y marketing campaign.
Yeah.
So like my CSM would say, hey, for this campaign, they're trying to tell from this batch of 100 calls, which ones are real conversions and which ones are false positives. And we're double checking the software. So I'd listen to 100 calls a day, I'd go in there and listen to them. And this kind of starts a theme in my career too, of like being obsessed with like the idea that the phone is such an easy, clear, like the most clear and direct and fastest way to communicate with people was the phone. And I learned that by listening to like 100 calls a day during this internship. Now I wasn't calling anybody, but I was just listening to these phone calls go on and how much you can get done quickly on the phone. I was like, ooh, okay, let's save that in the memory bank. Yeah, so I had that internship all the way through the end of college, moved downtown, and then it ended.
So let's go back for a second there. When you were working in that role, doing this, grunt work for the customer success manager, listening to these calls probably was, based on what you've told me, I would think was pretty interesting for you with like that psychology background and that curiosity of people, listening to the way that they communicate and how things got done. But then seeing the salespeople over there having fun, ringing the gong, having that energy, did you feel sort of pulled towards that?
Oh, for sure. I remember thinking like they would hire BDRs, SDRs, whatever they were calling them at the time. They'd hire them in batches. And then when they would hire a batch of SDRs, I would be like, man, and I go on those dudes like LinkedIn's and like stalk who they are and be like, I could get this job. I could totally do this. Like, this is so cool. And I thought that it was like the coolest thing in the world. They were getting these SDR jobs. And I was so jealous. I was like, oh man, I want to be an SDR. Because it just looked like fun. Like they're making noise. They were the ones that went out way more, like, hey, we're going to State Street, and I'd go hang out with them and get to know them a little bit. But I felt like it was at that company in particular, it would have been a little, maybe this is all me projecting, but it would have been a little weird if I had asked to transition over there or to become a salesperson. And I was also kind of scared of, what if I have to cold call? What if people say no? I had that genuine fear of not knowing anything about ever doing like a raw sales role, because all these internships I did were not in like sales. I guess Target was sales, right? Like I know how to work the cash register at Target and how to tell you where to find the sweatshirts,
and what TVs are on sale.
And what TVs are on sale. Like I definitely know that. But most of these internships were doing basic like work stuff. Hey, Kevin, we need this, take this document over here and copy and paste this thing. And I'm like, all right, cool. I can do that. But I figured out in college, I don't want to have a job like that. Like it didn't tick something for me. It didn't excite me. Right. And I just have this kind of personality where like, if I'm not excited by it, I'm not doing it. Like I just can't.
Well, it seems like all these internships were sort of like very just a discovery process for you. Like
Oh, for sure.
checking boxes. Nope. Don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Nope. Don't want to do that. Right. But I'm curious, right? So you didn't, you had some fear around not saying like, hey, I'd love to join the sales team, but you were also listening to those calls, right? Like you're listening to the good ones, the bad ones. And I'm sure that sort of felt like, wow, I don't think I could do that.
In a way, I thought that I could. I was worried about training, right? Like I was worried that like I'd get thrown into something and not know. Because like what I liked and what was comfy about the CSM stuff was like, sure, I know how to use Google Sheets. Sure, I know how to, I learned how to use Salesforce pretty quickly. And if you're tech savvy and you understand modern UIs, like it's not that hard, And I had like a mastery of it. And I was like, oh, okay, this is like easy. I know how to run in this world, I can check these boxes really quickly in my day-to-day and be satisfactory, But I definitely had that itch to get into sales because they were just having more fun.
Yeah. So what happened when that internship came to an end?
That internship came to an end a little bit unexpectedly, right? So this is another hard to swallow pill that,
Do you just keep those in your medicine cabinet? Hard to swallow pills?
Look, like you and me, we need to learn that way. Like that's in the bank, dude.
Yeah.
That's in the noggin forever. I told him that I had a job offer as a way to try and leverage my situation. So I was an hourly employee. This is a great learning moment for anyone listening. I was an hourly employee and I really wanted to be a salaried employee because I wanted to just have, make it easier, right? And punching a time card, even digitally, is kind of weird. And I was like, hey, so, I started having the conversation internally. I had it with like my boss, had it with the head of HR and said like, yeah, is that in the cards for me? Like, I really like this company. I feel like I'm doing well at the role. Like, I want a salaried job. And they said, oh, we got to think about it. And then to put pressure on them, I thought I was like leveraging something. I said, well, I'm talking to other companies and I have another salaried offer. So I really want to work here though. I made that very clear. And instead, they said, go work at that other company. They're giving you a salaried job. And they ended my internship. Joke's on me.
Were you hoping to actually get a salary job, or were you hoping that maybe they would offer you a sales job?
I hadn't talked about the sales thing yet, right? Like, cause the departments were on the opposite side of the office, so I didn't really like know any of the sales dudes. I didn't know the management well. I was uncomfortable with that. So I was hoping that they would say, "Oh yeah, no, let's just move this to a salary. It's a little bit of a raise, but not like too much of a raise. Like, let's do that." And it'd be more comfortable for me, right? Ipso facto, don't negotiate if you don't have alternatives, right? Yeah. It could not go your way really quickly. And they were in a weird place as a company, right? Like they let go of some other interns at the same time, and it was no harm, no foul. They didn't do anything wrong. It's just like we're restructuring. We overspent on some things here and there. That VP didn't last very long. That VP of customer success, it laid me off, by the way, just anecdotally. It's just, it was a weird time for the company. No animosity. It's just the way it happened. And it was blessing in disguise, right? So after that, I was a Lyft driver for the rest of the summer. This is back in the heydays of Lyft, man, like 2014. I was a Lyft driver with my Corolla, and I would like start working every Friday and work until Sunday night and make like $3,000 a month. And I was fine. I floated for a while. But I was trying to get into software sales and software in general. So I went on angellist.com and made a profile, and I started getting really active. And I found a company down in San Diego that was looking to hire like a what was it called? Like an account manager job or something like that. But it was a tiny seed stage startup, and there was no employees, one employee, the CEO. And I reached out to him on LinkedIn directly. I didn't apply online. And this is another big tip of how I've gotten basically all of my good gigs is not waiting in line, not applying online. I just reached out to him directly and said, hey, like we should talk. Like, I think this is really interesting. So it was a company called Dizzle, which is a really funny name. And I don't know if it's still around. It might still be around. But I got hired as the first employee. So my first job out of college technically was I was the first employee at a seed stage startup, which was really, really cool.
So you were sales hire number one.
I was hire number one. There was no one else there. It was the CEO who had equity in the company and me, and I was the only employee. The CTO and the tech people were like part-time. They were just doing it as kind of a side hustle. It was a real estate technology app. So we had a white label app process so we can make real estate agents their own mobile apps. So we can make the Colin Mitchell app. It was really cool. So I got to do everything, right? I was the product manager. I was the guy who would literally like, okay, someone came in the website, they ordered their app, they paid. Now I reach out to them, get the design. I use Photoshop to design the icon. Then I put it into the white label process, which then pops out files I need to put into Apple and Google Play Store. And then when their apps go live, I have to put them into this whole thing and send it to them and teach them how to use the app. I designed our training materials. I went to the trade shows. I started writing on a real estate technology blog.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I got way into it and I just loved it. Like it was really, really cool to go in every day and be like, I have an idea for something. And my CEO would be like, yeah, just do it. That's fine. As long as it didn't cost a lot of money. We were tight on cash. Like we were, seed stage startup with low revenue. We had revenue, which wasn't a lot. So
in this role, were you mainly dealing with inbound leads? Were you doing any outbound? Yeah. So this is where I started outbound. We had some inbound leads, right? We had a cool looking website and stuff. And the biggest thing that we were doing for inbound was writing. So the CEO wrote for the real estate technology blog before I did. And then he introduced me because he was getting busy and was like, we need to continue to put out content here. But we would get a ton of leads just from that. Like we'd publish an article. If you go deep enough on my LinkedIn, you can find this. It's Inman News. It's a pretty well-known publication for real estate agents. And I wrote like 8 articles for them. And they got lots of play. Like, because I was a young millennial. I'd talk about like how real estate agents should be using Snapchat when they're selling houses. I'd write articles about that, right? I wrote about the Zillow-Trulia merger. I wrote about all this stuff. And when we didn't have inbound, we started thinking about growth hacky ways to go outbound. So we did some cool stuff, right? Like we did like this is back when Tout App was still around. I think they got acquired by someone, but Tout App used to have this awesome thing. It's an email sending tool. So we'd load up a bunch of people to send emails to real estate agents. We would scrape their listings or active listings, and then we'd have their email address and their name. We'd put that in the Tout App, and the subject line would be your listing at 123 Main Street. The open rate was 98%. Every real estate agent's going to open that email. Yeah. So then with Tout App, I could see in real time, they had this like bar that popped up on the side. I could see in real time when people would open them. And then I would click on that agent's Zillow profile, find their cell phone number and call them like that. Wow. It was really cool. It was really cool. And that's where I started to really get the bug for sales. Because I was like, wow, this is fun. And then I would get some commission. I would get some commission if I could get someone to sign up. And I tell you what, salespeople out there listening, there is nothing like calling someone out of the blue and getting credit card information. Yeah. Like that is like the most raw form of sales. What was the sales process? Would they sign up on the spot?
Yeah. I'd get them to sign up on the spot. $30 a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. $30 a month for your own white label mobile app. What do you think? Why wouldn't you give this a shot? Basically is the pitch, right? Yeah. And then you find these real estate agents that are like tech savvy and they loved it. Like they would eat it up, right? And then we pivoted our business model, and that was really fun because we pivoted the business model from being like the Colin Mitchell app and the Chris app and the Steven app, and we pivoted it to be the brokerage app. So the whole like Coldwell Banker San Diego app. And then we would sell what the app was is a vendor list. So it's like the idea was a real estate agent would give you the app. They'd have all their preferred vendors. Here's my flooring guy. Here's my AC guy. Here's becoming a local expert, right? Yeah. It's a big deal for real estate agents. But then when we pivoted, I got to sell to the vendors. So what we did was we flipped the model and said, hey, let's sell one app and then monetize it just like Yelp, just like Angie's List, that model. So that was like high volume cold calling, right? That was like, I'd bang out, 80, 90 calls a day using click to dial before I knew how to use auto dialers or that they were even a thing. But then I'm calling like Bob the plumber. I'm calling Steve the flooring guy. And I'm calling, and that was really interesting. And I'm selling them advertising space. Selling them space in the app, promising them the world. Like it was really fun.
How long did you stay at that role?
I stayed at that role, it was like a year and a half. You
did a lot in a short time.
I did so much. And I got to travel to trade shows, and like I was the trade show guy. So like I would, be dressed up and stand at the booth all day collecting credit cards, or not credit cards, business cards.
Or credit cards.
Or credit cards. I'll take a credit card. But I did so much in a year and a half. It was really, really fun.
I'm curious because, a lot of times maybe somebody trying to get into sales, right?
Yeah.
They can want to work at the company that, has the cool swag, has the, cool snack bar, bean bags, whatever, but it sounds like in that role, like the experience itself was worth more than, getting a more, typical path that somebody like trying to get into sales or specifically trying to get into SaaS sales.
For sure. Yeah. And I think it was just a continuation of what I was doing in college, right? Like if you look at what I've always done, I've always been like, I have to go see for myself if this is for me. So I had to go try and be a product manager. And I love those meetings. I think product management is really, really cool. I don't know if I'm technical enough to really be a product manager, but as someone who studied psychology, it's like the intersection of technology and psychology. How do you make this app more useful for your users and for people, and like UX UI design? Fascinating stuff. Love it.
There's even people taking that same sort of like process or style of doing things and trying to just have salespeople sell that way.
Yeah.
Right? The way that product managers build products, have salespeople sell that way.
Like PLG?
No, it's I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were really going into like, how product managers understand people and psychology and stuff like that, and really taking some of those learnings and the ways that they map things out into the sales process.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So you stayed there for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like at this point, after taking many hard to swallow pills, does Kevin feel like, yeah, this is what I'm born to do?
A little bit, yeah. So after leaving there, I, one of the things I looked at was, what does it look like to get a career going in product management? And I interviewed for a few junior product management roles, and I figured out it's a little bit too technical for me, like the ones I interviewed for at least. And then I interviewed for like customer support roles, because I was doing customer support too. Like I adminned our Zendesk, Like I had a very deep knowledge on like the structure and the strategy of why you create a whole support program. And the job offers I got were just low salary with no cash. And
I'm actually really curious because the stuff that you did in that short period of time, it sounds like the sales aspect of the job is really what recharged you or lit you up.
Yeah.
Right. But you also enjoyed the customer support and the project management, and you went for those roles. I'm wondering why. Why didn't you go for a sales role?
Maybe I was still scared. It was still intimidating. I think it can be intimidating to think about like, yeah, I'm going to go into sales and have quota and, have to hit a number like that. I didn't have a quota because I had so many other jobs. It wasn't a real sales job, like real, right? We were talking about that earlier. Like if you have a quota, are you in sales? Like, I don't know. Some people would argue no. So then I interviewed to be an SDR at a company downtown San Diego that had the free beer on tap and the shirts and the $12 million of VC money. And that was really, really cool. I jumped into actual SaaS sales. And I was this SDR at a company called MindTouch downtown San Diego. And that was like so fun. It was really, really fun. Because they hired a bunch of dudes that were, we had an SDR team of like, at one point, like 12. And we were all, it was 90% men, and we were all within 5 to 8 years of the same age, and we all hung out on the weekends, and we all, we were like a brotherhood. It was really, really fun. And that's where I fell in love with sales, because I was like, I could do this. Like the energy of a calling pit, right? Of a BDR team, of like celebrating, like one guy walking around saying like, I crushed that demo, high fives, hey, got that meeting. And everyone's like, yeah, fist bumps and stuff. And I was like, this is like a team sport. It felt like a team sport, and I fell in love with that whole energy and vibe. And
It reminded you of your football days.
it did, for sure.
Were you rocking the helmet in the pit?
I was not rocking the helmet in the pit.
You should have been.
I should have been. I would have messed some people up with that helmet, like headbutting and stuff. But so once I figured out sales was for me, right? I've since what leads kind of all the way to where I am today is like falling in love with. I figured out that I'm in love with the process. I'm in love with the game. I'm in love with how to do this better, how to like get better meetings, get more qualified opportunities, close better deals faster, bigger, right? The whole process is what I became really obsessed about. And I figured out that companies come and go, to put it nicely, right? Like,
yeah,
there's 100,000 companies you can work for and sell stuff for. And that's kind of why I'm in consulting today, is because I like working with a lot of different companies and just being obsessed with certain pieces of that puzzle, the sales puzzle.
And so it's interesting because there's a lot of people that think like, oh, you got to be passionate about what you sell, right? And it sounds like you don't really care what you sell. You're passionate about selling.
That's right.
Or the process or the puzzle or making small changes for bigger wins.
That's right. That's right. And I would, I've heard this a lot. And when I talk to people in my life that I know, that when I tell them I'm a sales consultant, they're like, oh, wow, I don't know if I could ever sell anything. Like, that's crazy. And then they follow that up with, well, if I really believed in it, I could sell it. I'm like, well, sure. Right. Like, if you really believe in anything, you can sell it, but it's not the way capitalism is designed necessarily, right? Like, so I'm less passionate. I can seem super passionate about whatever I'm selling. I can turn that on. It's a gift, right? I've coached over 50 businesses on how to sell their product outbound. And outbound is the most raw form of sales because you are no assumptions. When I am calling you, you are thinking, who the are you and why the are you calling me? And then I have to get over that hump. Then I got to tell you a story that aligns with you to make you feel like I called you. I didn't call you as a name on a list. It's not a telemarketing thing. It's not advertising. This is sales. And I need to get into a topic-driven conversation with you. And so I'm obsessed with that. That's what I'm obsessed with. How do I teach more people to sell like that?
Where do you think a lot of people go wrong in their outbound strategies?
I mean, I think the number one problem is probably number one problem in outbound is probably the strategy, right? If you think about
or
strategy,
lack of.
lack thereof, right? So like the laziest thing, like that a lot of I've seen some like dudes with some big titles and these careers, and this is part of why I'm starting this podcast, because I'm so interested in how people get to where they've gotten in sales. Like it's fascinating to me. And some of these people where I'm like, yeah, you should be someone that knows their stuff. You should know how to tell the story, about your company and this. And the way they talk, they say things like, yeah, it's an incredibly game-changing thing. And if you could just give me 15 minutes, I would love to show you this. and I sit there and I'm like, that's the laziest thing you could ever say. It's the laziest thing you could ever say
with a lot
in
of
a selling conversation. A ton of assumptions. Yeah. Well, think about that statement. If you break that statement down, it's me, followed by me, and something that's great for me.
And then give me some of your time.
And then give me something from you. Like, what if I just showed up and I'm like, hey, I'm the greatest thing in the world. Like, you need to hang out with me. You need to hang out with me. When do you want to hang out with me? What? I don't want to hang out with you.
I don't even know you.
I don't even know you. Why would I hang out with you? I'm going to hang out with someone else, right? So that's kind of where my psychology background comes in, is the idea of like, the best way to communicate is not to talk about yourself the whole time. So put things in context for people. Tell stories, right? Bring them into something to where it makes logical sense, right? One of the things that I talk to SDRs about, they think that like coffee is for closers, right? And the whole idea of like cold calling is to like push. You got to ask. You got to get 5 no's before you hang up the phone. Like I push a completely different agenda. My agenda is, if it doesn't make logical sense, thank them for their time and hang up.
Yeah.
And reps are like, well, but aren't I supposed to get a meeting? How am I going to get a meeting if I hang up? Well, they just told you they have a solution to the problem that you solve. They're happy with it, and they're not in a buying cycle. Why would you bend them over the chair trying to get a meeting? Don't do that. Walk away.
Even if you get the meeting, it's not gonna go anywhere.
That's right. That's right. So that's where this obsession comes with, of like, get good meetings that turn into good opportunities, that turn into great customers.
Yeah.
Instead of what most people think cold calling is, which is like just begging, right? Like I teach my anyone that I consult with, I teach them to have a forward-leaning posture, meaning you're in control. You understand what's going on. You understand exactly what's going to happen in this call, what could happen. Before you pick up the phone, they're not interested, okay? They're not interested. That's not an answer. That's not an acceptable
Don't be
outcome.
surprised.
Don't be surprised.
Yeah.
When you hear they're not interested, of course, I know that. You would have called me if you're interested, right?
Yeah.
Things like that make it, it makes the job enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
It makes it something that sales reps don't despise and they don't fear anymore.
All right. So before we get to the 3 final questions, just tell people that are tuning in, why are you doing the podcast and what can they expect in the podcast?
Yeah, I'm doing this podcast because I have a genuine, curiosity in human stories, right? I'm inspired by guys like Joe Rogan, honestly, who just has people on that tell their stories. And I think especially the following I have on LinkedIn and Twitter and things like that, like thousands and thousands of people that probably have some of the same questions I do when they look at an SVP of sales. They look at a guy who just got the hottest sales job at the biggest startup, and they think, how did you get there, right?
Yeah.
Or you see that CRO and the company sells, right? My favorite thing is when you find the CRO where the company sells and then he changes his LinkedIn to sabbatical or traveling. And you're like, yeah, that guy just had a liquidity event. He just did it.
Yeah.
That's why we're all playing the game. He had a liquidity event. He's got 6, 10, 20 million in the bank, and he is traveling with his family. That's what we all want to do. If you're in the software sales game, right? I'm talking very specifically. So I want to uncover some of those stories and hopefully share other people's stories in a way that uncovers useful things for anyone who's listening, right? Whether you're a CEO trying to figure out like, what kind of salespeople should I hire? What kind of background should I look for? If you're a VP of sales and you're thinking, I got to build an outbound team, I got to build an inbound team, I got to look for these specific sorts of people, maybe I can have those sorts of people on my podcast. They can learn more about those sorts of backgrounds. Or if you're a rep, if you're thinking about getting into sales, or if you're in sales, you're not sure if it's for you, you want to learn about, what other sales jobs are like. I don't want to just interview SaaS people. Like most of the people I'm going to interview are going to be SaaS because that's most of my following and most people who I know. But I'm totally going to find like someone who sells copiers and someone who,
What about your uncle?
Yeah, maybe my uncle. Yeah, he does like money management. That could be a good one.
Or you said when you're at your uncle's lake house, so the person who sells the
the aluminum smelting. So like he sells the poles that go into the aluminum smelting machine.
Yeah.
Like it's such a weirdly specific sales job. I'm like, that is beautiful, man. And
How do you get into selling smelting pieces?
Yeah, like that is so interesting to me that he ended up there and he loves that job. And he told me he makes good money.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a nice lake house on a nice lake with a nice boat. I'm like, all right, well, shoot, there's so many ways to make money in this career,
Yeah. All right. You ready for it?
I was born ready for this. And
Here we go.
To those tuning in, you can expect this on every episode. I think that this is a really important piece of building consistency.
Number 1, what's your biggest commission check?
The biggest single commission check I've ever received was $19,000.
Boom.
That was a month. That was 1 month. So that was a nice month. And I think for other people, it could be bigger numbers if you get a quarterly or a half yearly check, or maybe someone's had a much bigger commission check in a month than that. But like when I got that commission check, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. The worst part, living in California and getting that commission check. Do the math, 46% less is what I got. I got the other half of that, 46% with the taxes. So
you need a better tax person.
Dude, if you're a W-2, you don't have a lot of options, but that's why I'm a consultant now. So,
all right. Next one. What has been your favorite job in sales or not in sales?
My favorite job was actually nothing that we discussed today. My favorite job was working at the Christmas tree lot in high school. Because if you think about it, the Christmas tree lot in high school was in the middle of Manhattan Beach, which is basically my hometown. It was an upscale Christmas tree lot. I should kind of, that's an important piece of the story, right? Like it wasn't like Home Depot where it's kind of churn and burn and like the dudes are there like throwing around $40 Christmas trees. These Christmas trees were like $150 for like a 6-foot tree. And so it was a bougie Christmas tree lot. And everyone that comes to the Christmas tree lot is like happy. You don't go to the Christmas tree lot when you're upset. Like when the family walks in, the kids are running around. They sold, they didn't sell it. They gave away hot cocoa and hot cider. And then so they're walking around with their cider, walking through the Christmas trees. And then everyone who came there was fairly affluent. So I'd take a tree, go throw it on top of a Audi Q6, tie it down, get handed a $50 bill and walk back in. And it smelled like Christmas trees. And I worked with all my friends. The best job ever. And I'd make like $3,000 in a month. And at the time in high school, $3,000, like Kanye West over here. Like I felt like I was ready to pop bottles. It was a great job.
All right, final question. If money wasn't an issue, what would you be doing?
If money wasn't an issue, I don't think I could sit still. It's not in my DNA, right? Like some people say they do nothing. And I would challenge that because look at people who retire. People who retire rarely do nothing. And the ones that do die early. Yeah. Stay active, right? So I would be active. I actually want to try and retire early and get to a point where I can live off this exact lifestyle I'm about to describe. So I would work part-time at a golf course, hopefully a nice golf course, like part-time marshal, drive around and say, hey guys, go a little faster, please. You don't need 7 practice swings. And then you get to play golf for free and you're outdoors and you're around golfers and you can talk to people about golf stuff all day. And then I would also be part-time brewery beer tender. I have a real passion for craft beer. I have for many, many years. And I always want to get involved in the industry. And it's, owning a home in Southern California, it would be really tough unless I owned a brewery to like put food on the table doing that. So I would work at a brewery and I would work at a golf course, both part-time, add that up to like, 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
That'd be so fun.
Maybe even your own brewery. Hops.
Yeah, I mean, shoot. I know some people that own breweries and they've told me to avoid. They like never own a brewery. So maybe if I have that liquidity event, I can invest in a brewery and just show up and drink some beer. But running a brewery sounds like a lot. But getting involved in the back of it and, pouring beers and people walking up and saying, I don't know, like, I don't like hoppy beers. What should I get? I don't like this. I'm already that guy. All my friends know I'm that guy. They're always like, Kevin, what should I get here? I'm like, you should probably do this one. I love talking about that stuff. So that's what I would do.
There it is. Biggest commission check, $19,000 in 1 month.
Yeah.
Favorite job, Christmas tree lot. Bougie Christmas tree lot.
Bougie Christmas tree lot.
And if money was an issue, 2 part-time jobs.
Yeah.
Working at the golf course and brewery.
That's right. That'd be fun.
All right. That's a wrap for the inaugural episode. Thanks so much for letting me be your guest host. Next time you guys tune in here, Kevin will be in the host seat. And if you enjoyed today's episode, write a review for the show, share the show with your friends. Until next time.
Cheers. If this episode is interesting to you, please share your thoughts on LinkedIn or Twitter. Tag me, and I might just feature your post in an upcoming episode of the Sales Career Podcast. Or if you want to connect directly, go to hopconsultinggroup.com and we'll find a way to work together. Cheers.